What also is remarkable here, moving to the wide receiver core, is not just to have the best wide receiver room in the country, but to be going into the next season with still the most proven best wide receiver room in the country, because you basically lose no one. Of course, Jackson Smith and Jigba only caught 5 passes, so I'm not really counting him, not discarding the great talent, but he didn't play last year. He was no impact, and everybody's coming back.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. And I think we say this a lot when we're talking about Ohio State's wide receiver room the last 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it's been. But the fact that you can have a guy like Jackson Smith and Jigba basically miss the entire season and you don't miss a beat. Now, you did have some really highly recruited guys like Emeka Egbuka, Marvin Harrison Jr., Julian Fleming. You did have a talented tight end in Cade Stover, and obviously you had the quarterback in CJ Stroud. So that makes it easier to sustain a loss like that. But then, as you mentioned, Mark, what a room to have at your fingertips for either of these quarterbacks as they kind of embark on this competition. You're throwing to maybe the best receiver in the country in Marvin Harrison Jr. You're throwing to another guy in Emeka Egbuka who, look, Marvin Harrison Jr. had a great season last year, 77 catches, 1,263 yards, and 14 touchdowns. Emeka Egbuka had 74 catches, 1,151 yards, and 10 touchdowns. So, it's kind of a guy who's not getting talked about nearly as much as Marvin Harrison Jr., but the numbers are close. And throughout much of the season, Emeka Egbuka was dealing with some injuries that slowed him down. So he will undoubtedly be better in 2023. And that means Ohio State's room will be even better in 2023. And we can go deeper down the depth chart there as we kind of, look at these talented wide receivers Ohio State's recruiting. I mentioned Julian Fleming, who finally kind of started to come into his own healthy last year. Jaden Ballard's a guy who's looking to break out. Ohio State had a good class of receivers come in last year. And then obviously they're bringing in another group of wide receivers that are expected to be very good. So it just keeps on rolling in the wide receiver room for the Buckeyes.
And again, not to belabor the point, but I think it's just pretty remarkable that, it's one thing to say, okay, during the season or just at the conclusion of a season, okay, that was the best positional unit in the country there. But to be going into the next season knowing that they were the best last season and they didn't lose anybody. So it only makes sense that they're the best in the country. And I don't think anyone argues with that going into this season. And then we extend it to the tight end position. And, one of the things with all the attention given, and rightfully so, to the Marvin Harrison ouster, the hit placed on Harrison in the Georgia game and him leaving the game, is that, Ryan Day brought up a number of times the loss of Cade Stover and how much that hurt. He's coming off 36 catches, but he is returning.
Yeah, that was a big decision for Ohio State to get Cade Stover back. And I think we talked about it when we were kind of recapping the game between the two of us. If you have Cade Stover on that drive in the fourth quarter, obviously you're without Marvin Harrison Jr., but maybe you're not throwing a slant pass to Xavier Johnson. And we've said some good things about Xavier Johnson, but maybe you're throwing it to a Cade Stover who, nothing against Xavier Johnson, but a bit more reliable of a wide receiver, a guy who'd been on the field more and whatnot. So him coming back next year means you're not having to speed up the development of some of the younger tight ends. Now, I think there is going to be a pretty special player for Ohio State. He dealt with an injury last year. He had the unfortunate circumstance of his mother passing away during the season. So he didn't have a lot of time on the field for the Buckeyes in 2022. But this is a talented kid who, similar to Jeremy Ruckert, who was Ohio State's tight end a couple of years prior to last season and is now in the NFL, came in as more of a passing tight end who has worked to build up the necessary, strength and whatnot to be the Buckeyes need, but could give them something different in the receiving game, similar to what Cade Stover has developed into as well. So I think you've got two talented guys there. You've got G. Scott Jr., who is a guy that I think everyone's still kind of waiting to see what he becomes. He was a really talented wide receiver, a really highly recruited wide receiver in that 2020 class that featured Julian Fleming, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. And then he transitioned to tight end. It's still been a work in progress for him. And how does he fit in will be interesting. And then you've got the young guys, Sam Hart, Bennett Christian, sorry. So the guys that could slowly work their way up. But I think the two guys to know for sure are the returning Cade Stover, who another guy who battled injuries throughout the season. I think you saw it blocking the second half of the year. And then Joe Royer and kind of what his development looks like as Ohio State's number 2 tight end.